It's waxing lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mainz and Dutts. I'm your host, Mainz, and my colleague, a man who believes he should not only have his own keys, but his wife's. It's Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil? Glad to see you're still alive.
How can I know the keys are safe if I don't have them all?
It's a fair assumption, but how can your wife drive a car or lock a house without any keys?
How's that my problem?
It becomes your problem almost immediately because it's your partner. You survived, so I'm impressed.
Well, as I say, the keys were safe. I didn't lose them.
No, you knew exactly where they were. They were in your car at a train station that you weren't at.
Yeah, but they were perfectly safe. They were there when I came back. The car was there when I came back. What's the problem?
What did she do?
Well, this is obviously interest to everyone. We've recently had our front door changed.
Yes.
But we haven't had the back door changed.
Okay.
So we still had the key to the back door. So Kate found her spare car keys.
Mega.
So we went up the back door, had to leave the gate open, but went up the back door, locked that, and went up there.
Magnificent stuff, Neil. Magnificent stuff. These are the things that people need to know.
They do.
Neil, we've been away a couple of weeks. But we're going to finish kind of the 2021 season with our draft thoughts, with a fantasy spin. And then we're going to go into off-season mode, interviews, weird worlds and the likes. But today is draft heavy, but with our own inimitable fantasy spin. We're going to look at the trades that took place during the draft. Two big ones, really, from a fantasy point of view. We're going to look at Dynasty rookie drafts and the top 12 rookies that have entered the league. And then based on all the free agency and the draft being complete, who are in redraft leagues, the top 12 right now on the 5th of May.
I think it's only fair we do this.
Neil, let's get on with the show and let's talk about the draft trades. So Neil, two major trades happened during the draft. First one impacts you heavily. One of your favourite players, one of the waxing lyrical stalwarts of the past few years, AJ Brown, is now a Philadelphia Eagle. I guess, what are your initial thoughts and how do you see it impacting the Philadelphia Eagles?
My initial thoughts was to take my pants off, swing them on my head and cheer.
Of course.
But, again, the police asked me to cease and desist this activity. It's always worrying because I hate having players I love on my actual team because then it means they're going at one point they're going to do me wrong. But I digress. It's exciting because it gives a third option to the passing game. I always like passing games where there's a 3 or a 4 some teams. So you've got AJ Brown, you've got Devonta Smith, you've got Dallas Goedert. You've still got the ground game. So that's good. From an Eagles fan point of view, this is exciting. It's another weapon in the offense. AJ Brown is one of the most efficient wide receivers in the game. He's coming from a ridiculously run-heavy situation with the Titans. But you look, since he's entered the league, he's had, he's mid-20s in terms of targets. He's late 20s in terms of receptions. But he's in the early teens in terms of receiving yards. He's in the high top 10 in terms of touchdowns. He's averaging 16 yards per reception. Among the wide receivers who've seen 300 targets since 2019, that's the second highest. He's averaging 10.1 yards per target. That's first. And in terms with a metric called receiving fantasy points over expectation, which is an efficiency metric, in that time, he has 159.3, which is second.
Can you explain what that stat means for the uneducated?
Well, expected points are points that you would expect a player to accrue. So receiving yards or fantasy points, you'd expect an average player to accrue based on historical statistics given the down, the distance, and the game situation. So a bog standard player, their receiving points over expectation would be 0. They get exactly what you want. But if someone in 3 years has nearly 160 receiving fantasy points over expectation, that's pretty bloody good.
It is.
So in terms of do we expect AJ Brown to come in and be 150 target a year player? No. He wasn't that in Tennessee, and he's not going to be it here. But we've seen that he can be ridiculously efficient with the ball in his hands as a deep threat, and he's got a nose for the end zone as well. For what the Eagles had to give up to get him, the salary doesn't really bother me. That's just the way wide receivers are going. If you've got a good wide receiver, you're going to pay them. To only really spend a first-round draft pick on him, I think is exceptional value. If you just said, the Eagles, 3 weeks ago, they had 3 first-round picks. But if you'd said, well, you're going to have 2, you're going to flip one and have an extra pick in 2023. Actually, you're only going to pick 1 player in the first round, and you're going to have AJ Brown. I think most Eagles fans would have snapped everyone's hands off. So I think this makes the Eagles' offense dangerous, but it also puts the pressure on Jalen Hurts as, all right, mate, it's on you now. Because if it's not you, the quarterback we've got next year has got AJ Brown, Dallas Goedert, and Devonta Smith.
I think if you look at it, this was not the year in which the Philadelphia Eagles were going to get a quarterback in the draft. Now, they could have attempted to sign the Russell Wilsons, the Deshaun Watsons of this world, but they chose not to do that, and in one of those situations, I'm very glad they did. So, the next best thing is to put as many weapons as possible around the quarterback that you have in situ. So to get someone like AJ Brown, target monster, yards after catch, is a really sensible approach. To still keep 2 first round draft picks next year allows leverage to, if need be, move up or attack quarterback next year if Jalen Hurts isn't the answer. But what the Eagles have done is allowed themselves a situation where one of the things that right now couldn't be levelled is that he didn't have any talent around him, which is what you want. You don't want it. This shouldn't be an ifs, buts, and maybes conversation. You want to make it as black and white as possible, and I think this does. Is AJ Brown immediately number 1 fantasy wide receiver on the Eagles, and is he a top 10 receiver in fantasy in general?
No, I don't think he is, because as ridiculously efficient as he is coming to a situation where there is legitimate competition for targets, which he didn't have last year. I would assume the Eagles might lean slightly more pass heavy than they were last year, because obviously they ran the shit out of the ball. It helped, obviously, it suited Jalen Hurts' skill set to do that. I just don't think AJ Brown is going to get enough targets to be a top 10 player. He has shown he can be efficient, which is great. Efficiency we don't really love in fantasy. We want volume. Mm-hmm. So do I see him being a top 15 option? Yeah. He'll have weeks where he may, sniff wide receiver on airspace, but expect him to do that over the course of the season, I don't think he is. I think he's a wonderful real-life signing, but he's not someone that I desperately need for fantasy, I don't think.
If we look at it from the Titans' point of view, they decided that they couldn't afford to pay a 24-year-old wide receiver $100 million. That is an interesting approach to team building. I was speaking on the touchdowns.co.uk last night on their pod, saying that it's a kind of situation where I think sometimes teams can over-evaluate their own talent evaluation process. We got AJ Brown, we made AJ Brown good, so therefore we can do that again, is a pretty arrogant approach to situations. They drafted Treylon Burks, but this was a team that was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. I know no one ever thought they were, but they actually were. Based on what it looked like Mike Vrabel thought of the trade when it was live on the telly, and based on what happened, this team is worse now than it was 2 weeks ago, right?
Absolutely. And as you say, it's interesting that they decided they couldn't pay AJ Brown because they paid a running back.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that in terms of guaranteed money, the ownership group of the Titans is not the most cash rich, in the sense that they probably don't have the money to pay a big contract for their wide receiver that would require a large signing bonus.
I think we need kind of need to say this to those who are unaware of kind of how management works. If you sign a large deal, you have to put all that money in escrow, so that money has to exist in cash and be placed somewhere to be able to play that player. It's not something you can just, I'll pay it later. Once you sign that deal, you need to have that cash available and put it somewhere so that it can be paid to that player. Sorry, Neil, carry on.
And when they've already paid off, a big sum to Ryan Tannehill and to Derrick Henry, they just decided to say, well, AJ Brown, we can't afford to pay him. He's had some injury concerns. I mean, this is a guy who has maintenance days, and I say he's not even 25 years old. That's something of a worry, especially given the Eagles' track record with injured players, but I digress. You cannot look at the Titans' offense and say that this unit has improved from last year. You just can't. Derrick Henry might come back and might be healthy again. We've seen it happen. We know he's a freak. But they needed weapons to complement AJ Brown, not replace him. They've lost Julio Jones. He wasn't Julio Jones anymore, but he was still a starting caliber NFL wide receiver on a run-heavy team. They've traded for Robert Woods, who's coming off an ACL injury. As I said, they've drafted Treylon Burks, and Burks might be another AJ Brown. But this is the Peter Griffin, the box could be anything. It could even be a boat scenario. This guy could be anything. He might even be AJ Brown, but you had AJ Brown. But they couldn't pay him, or didn't want to pay him. So it's hard for me.
The issue on that is I don't know what... Do you know what's better than one AJ Brown?
Two
AJ Browns.
Yeah, that could work. The thing in the Titans' favour going into 2022 is they're still, the last time I checked, in the same division as the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Houston Texans. There's 4 wins. They usually split with the Colts. There's 5. Can they find 4 wins, 4 or 5 wins elsewhere? You would think so. So I don't see the bottom falling out completely. They've just made it very hard for themselves.
I do agree with that, although the Tennessee Titans are going to fall right into that middle zone, and that's not where you want to be. The middle is not good because you can't get out of it, and you end up, pissing off your starting quarterback and telling them that he's not going to mentor the guy you just drafted because that's not his job.
Well, I mean, just speaking about that, I would agree that it is not the starting quarterback's job to mentor his replacement. However, you're the starting quarterback. You should be showing him what it means to be a pro. So it should be, look, this is the time I get into the facility. I expect to see you there. Let's watch film. Let's watch some film together. Does that mean, he can take my snaps in practice? Of course it doesn't. Show him how to be a pro. Let's watch and see what Alex Smith did when the Chiefs drafted Mahomes.
Who pays Ryan Tannehill, by the way, just to double check?
The Titans.
So the Titans can decide what the fuck Ryan Tannehill does. So I find it interesting. He said he's not going to do something. That's cool. They could not pay you for the money that is not guaranteed. So if they ask you to do certain things, you either do it or you don't get paid by them. So I think it's a non-story in that sense. It's all big bravado on a thing, but if your boss says you probably should do that, then you either do it or you don't have a job. It's how jobs work.
And lest we forget, the last time we saw the Titans in regular season action, in postseason action, Ryan Tannehill stunk.
Yes, absolutely.
Now I know the offense didn't work properly once Derrick Henry went out. You're getting paid an awful lot of money. And I know you didn't exactly have, the greatest show on turf on the outside or in the slot. You stunk. So,
let's move on, Neil. The other trade was Hollywood, Bakersfield, whatever Brown you want to call him. is now a Arizona Cardinal, replacing, I guess, Christian Kirk, we thought, but now it seems that he could be replacing DeAndre Hopkins for the 6 games he's suspended for PED violations. I guess Hollywood Brown saw, unbeknownst to I think a lot of people, Hollywood Brown saw a lot of targets for the Baltimore Ravens. What wasn't unbeknownst to people was he dropped a lot of them. And I guess the question is, now he's moved from his best mate Lamar Jackson to his best mate Kyler Murray. What impact does that have on the Arizona Cardinals?
While A.J. Brown is one of the most efficient wide receivers despite a lack of elite volume, Marquise Brown is one of the most inefficient wide receivers on insufficient volume. So, for example, he's, since coming into the league in 2019, 23rd in targets, 23rd in receptions, 29th in yards. His yards per reception is 12.2, which is tied for 17th among 26 wide receivers with 300 targets. His yards per reception, and bear in mind, what's Marquise Brown's calling card? Speed?
Yeah.
So I'd expect a large yards per reception. The exact same 12.2 as Devontae Adams, not regarded as being a burner. His yards per target, 7.6, tied for 22nd. And his receiving fantasy points over expectation is 41.8. That's 14th among 26 players with, let's say, 300 targets. For a first-round pick, that's not great, I don't think. The fact the Ravens were able to get this level of production from him, flip him for a first-round pick 3 years later, is why the Ravens will never ever have the first overall pick.
Well, they will if someone gives it to them.
Yeah,
they flipped Hollywood Brown, who I think you could argue has been a disappointment based on where he was drafted, was traded for a better draft pick than where he was drafted. Like only the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, as a neutral, which you are, for the situation. Although 30 years ago you wouldn't be that neutral because obviously Arizona and the Eagles would have been in the same division as Washington.
Correct.
Which Brown would you rather have?
Well, I think it's a no-brainer, right? Like, I understand. I think I didn't understand the trade pre the Hopkins suspension. I understand it a little bit more based on the Hopkins suspension because I believe the Cardinals got a bit desperate and shopped around. They paid well over the odds. I mean, I do look at both of these trades, and I know it's slightly different on age and stuff like that. But like the Browns got Amari Cooper for a 5th rounder, so like some of these teams are playing different sports, just like unbelievable. Like A.J. Brown's needed a new contract and was 24, so I kind of understand the price you've got to pay. I'm not sure you had to pay a 1st round pick for Hollywood Brown. They did. For the Ravens, it is a slight concern. I'd guess for those in dynasties and redrafts, it's time to look at your Rashad Bateman stock and make sure you've got some, because at the moment it's him and Mark Andrews and not much else. Don't think we'll see, and I guess a lot of running from the Baltimore Ravens.
That's it. Obviously, the Ravens we've known with Lamar Jackson, they want to run the ball. Now, last year they struggled to run the ball because they lost their 2 leading running backs, J.K. Dobbins and the Gus Bus, before the season started. So they were trotting out some seriously replacement-level players. But we do know that at their core, as long as Lamar Jackson is the quarterback, they want to run the ball. Now, last year they got away from that. As I say, it didn't help losing all those players, but if you bear with me a second while I call up the RotoViz Pace app, neutral game script last year. So the neutral game pass rate. By neutral, what I mean is when the score is within 7 points. So you're either 7 points up or 7 points down. Last season, in neutral situations, the Ravens passed 53% of the time. In 2020, in neutral situations, Where are we here? The Ravens passed 49% of the time. That's a big difference. So they're going to want to go back to those routes. So this is good news for J.K. Dobbins. It's good news for Gus Edwards. It's good news for Lamar Jackson. We have seen in the past that Mark Andrews can be a fancy superstar, but what got him there? Volume. I don't think he's going to get the volume this year, so I think it hurts his fancy stock somewhat. Rashard Bateman is going to be the wide receiver 1 in Baltimore, but does that mean he's going to be a wide receiver 1? I don't think so. But just flipping to the other side as well, I do not see, based on how he finished last year, and with this news, I do not see how anyone can draft DeAndre Hopkins in fantasy with any degree of positivity.
Fantastic, Neil, and I think that's a good way to finish. Those 6 weeks are massive, and how they impact the Cardinals as a season and whatever. I suggested that I would wear a Manchester United top with Ronaldo 7 on the back if Cliff Kingsbury was in the job this time next season, at the end of this season, because I believe that he will be fired, and I think right now this team is challenging with the Drew Lock led Seattle Seahawks for the worst team in the NFC West.
I think they'll score a lot of points. I worry that they weren't bold enough on defense in the draft, and that they spent their first pick of the draft on Trey McBride. Now, I like tight ends. People may have noticed. I didn't think that pick was necessary. So, it baffled me. Oh, by the way, I was wrong. Their neutral game pass rate in 2020 was 44%, not 49%.
Jesus, that's a lot of running. Anyway, Neil, let's move on and let's look at your Dynasty top 12.
Yes, so if we assume, like some people do, once the draft's finished, rookie drafts are happening. If we assume that you have a Dynasty draft some point soon, this is who I would be taking in the first round. So this would be my first round.
Okay.
Rookies.
You give the name and I'll say where they are.
Okay. PPR formats. Single quarterback PPR. Okay. Number 1, Breece Hall.
He is at the New York Jets. He is formerly Iowa State. He is a running back.
Number 2 is Kenneth Walker.
Also a running back from Michigan State. Now a Seattle Seahawk.
Number 3, Treylon Burks.
Wide receiver Arkansas, who we've discussed earlier. Now with the Tennessee Titans.
Drake London.
From USC. Wide receiver, now with the Atlanta Falcons.
Garrett Wilson.
New York Football Jets, formerly Ohio State. He's a wide receiver.
Jameson Williams.
Wide receiver Alabama, now with the Detroit Lions, who traded up to get him.
Chris Olave.
He's a Washington... No, sorry. He's a New Orleans Saint wide receiver from Ohio State.
Did you see the tweet by Austin Gale of PFF?
No.
Regarding Chris Olave? I shall just call it up. The New Orleans Saints essentially traded picks number 98, 101, 120, a 2023 first rounder and a 2024 second rounder for Chris Olave. Mickey Loomis is a madman.
Yeah, of that there is no doubt.
So after Chris Olave, bear with me a second. After Chris Olave, Sky Moore.
That guy with 2 Ys. He's now a Kansas City Chief, and he was a wide receiver for Western Michigan.
James Cook.
He's a running back for Georgia, and now with the Buffalo Bills.
George Pickens.
He was a wide receiver at Georgia, and now plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Christian Watson.
This is an unbelievable situation, because this, my friends, is a wide receiver who was drafted by the Green Bay Packers. He was originally from North Dakota State.
And closing out my first round, Rashad White.
I had to do a lot of searching for this man's name. Drafted in the 3rd round from Arizona State. He's a running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Neil, through this top 12, is there a logic other than volume and then situation?
Volume, situation, landing spot does help. I mean, some people would say that Kenneth Walker is the best runner of this draft class. That's a lovely story. He may well run a lot for Seattle. Seattle are going to stink this year. And they may stink for quite a few years. So, seriously, game script is not going to go in his favour. And also, he has no pass-catching pedigree of note. Now, no, just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean they can't do it. It just means we haven't seen it. Mm-hmm. But on a team that I don't think is going to be very good, with quarterbacks that aren't very good, I think it would be a reach to expect him to be an every down back and gobble up all the passing down work. So that's why, a situation like that, Drake London is the wide receiver 1 in Atlanta straight away. Because who else is there? Olamide Zaccheaus? Come on.
He is. As I said on Touchdown the Code UK, I'm going to use it again because it's awesome. He is WCW tag team. The Twin Towers, which is Spivey and Sid Vicious, managed by Teddy Long. They are 2 tall men, and that is Pitts and London. They will be large, and you can throw to them pretty high and let them go up and get it.
When you have a quarterback who's not the most accurate, someone like Marcus Mariota or Des Ridder, it helps. I say literally, he's always open 6 foot above his head.
Yeah.
So it's important with rookies as well to look at situation above all else, almost more than talent. Because the talent ultimately, sometimes it's not going to get realised. But if these lads have landed somewhere where they're going to get a role, then that's going to help.
Does the Jameson Williams injury scare you in any way? Because you have him here at 6, and there's a chance that he may not be ready for pre-season.
Yeah, it doesn't worry me. The types of injuries these lads can recover from nowadays, that it doesn't worry me that he's not going to be healthy. Now, I
think this is where we need to quickly say this is a dynasty draft. So this isn't someone who needs to be good this year for your team. This is someone who you will have on your roster until you decide to get rid of him. So you could have Jameson Williams for 10 years.
Exactly. And the body type of Jameson Williams, it's a close comp to someone like Deshaun Jackson in his pomp. You know, he's a smaller guy, he's nimble. Smaller guy, he's light, but he's fast. And we saw Deshaun Jackson have many fantasy relevant seasons without huge volume. So it doesn't worry me this year because he may not be healthy this year fully, so he may not embrace his full role in the offense. There's also a good chance that Detroit don't have their 2023 quarterback on the roster.
True.
So as they put pieces in place, this offense could look a lot better next year when Williams is healthy or healthier and are able to come up and fulfill the promise that he has shown. So it doesn't worry me because if I was really high on him, he'd be higher on this list. If I was lower than him, he'd be below someone like Sky Moore, who's in an unbelievable situation, even as a rookie.
I assume that Jahan Dotson not being in your top 12 is pure bants against me, so explain yourself.
Jahan Dotson is an intriguing prospect. I fear that the Commanders reached when they didn't have to, considering the players who are still on the roster. I worry that he's not going to come on and be... He's not going to be the guy, because that's Terry McLaurin. You have to look at the quarterback situation of Washington and say it's not settled, and it's hard for me to sit here with a straight face and tell you that Carson Wentz is going to be their quarterback in 2023. Do I then think it's going to be Sam Howell? I don't know, but they've taken him. So Jahan Dotson, I say, is an intriguing prospect. He's probably a very good player, but I hate the situation. And also, we've seen this team, they want to run the ball. They think that's what they are. And if that's your quarterback, conundrum, it's probably a wise idea to do it. So I don't hate him. I just wouldn't take him in the first round of a rookie draft.
Ron Rivera likened the potential 1-2 punch of Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson, the running back they drafted shockingly from Alabama, which every third player they draft is from, which is ironic as one of those is a professional run franchise and the other one is the Washington Commanders. To the Jonathan Stewart, D'Angelo Williams pairing he used in Carolina, that is his hope. That, in a sentence, is why Neil is right. If you do watch Jahan Dotson now, he's really good at catching one-handed when the ball has been completely overthrown or he's been mistargeted, which he should do perfectly well with Carson Wentz as his quarterback. Neil, let's move on to the redraft top 12. I will quickly go through. These are with now free agency and the draft complete. This is you are starting from scratch. Who do you pick first in the kind of what we call quote unquote standard leagues? You've got Jonathan Taylor 1, Austin Eckler 2, CMC 3, Cooper Kupp 4, Dalvin Cook 5, 6 Derrick Henry, 7 Justin Jefferson, 8 Najee Harris, 9 Joe Mixon, 10 Jamar Chase, 11 Stephon Diggs, and 12 Devontae Adams. Neil, are we starting to see? Is this the final year we see CMC and Derrick Henry in the 12?
Certainly possible. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is now 3 years removed from his, Christian McCaffrey no matter what season.
Mm-hmm.
We have to assume he's going to be healthy, and we have to assume that given the quarterback situation they're going to have in Carolina, that they feed McCaffrey. They're getting towards the end of his guaranteed money, so run him into the ground. And as I say, volume being key. This is probably his last proper chance to be a full-fledged running back one, maybe pressing for the 1,000 club, which he's already done once. Derrick Henry, as I say, because he doesn't have the extensive passing down work, because he's coming off a lost season, can he come in and be fancy relevant? Yeah. But we have seen in the past that he put up 2,000 yards and didn't finish as the running back one that season. But he's always scored a large number of touchdowns at a very high rate. But it wouldn't surprise me if he were to show that he is human as well, and that he falls off the cliff. That's why I can't have him any higher than I have him at the moment. I know there's question marks about some of the players ahead of him. I feel better about them given their situation than I do about him at present.
Why no Chubb, Neil?
Because this is PPR, and Nick Chubb does not catch passes. He has a situation where he has a quarterback who does not have a track record of throwing to running backs. I think Chubb will benefit from the presence of this new quarterback, especially because of his mobility, and we've seen what friend Kelly calls the Alfred Morris corollary. In that, when you have a quarterback who freezes the linebackers, the running back often benefits. But Chubb doesn't catch passes. Kareem Hunt does. They've also got Dearness Johnson and Jerome Ford to catch passes should they need it. So I don't think Chubb is good. Chubb would have to score 20 touchdowns and rush for 1,800 yards to be a running back one, because he doesn't catch passes. I love Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I was going to say, Nick Chubb's in my Dynasty League that we're drafting on Saturday in Birmingham, so I hope you're wrong. You have Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver one in your redraft at present. Is that you expect 80% of what we got last year, which would still be pretty spectacular?
I think he has this mind meld going with Matthew Stafford. Stafford is comfortable with him. He's lost. There's no Robert Woods now. There's no Odell Beckham. They've got Allen Robinson. That's fine. Kupp was still, lapping the field in terms of target competition. To expect him to repeat what he did last year would be a massive outlier. But I still think, you'd be stupid. Put it this way, you'd have to be a goddamn hero to look at what he did last year and say, nah, I think he's going back to 50 catches, 800 yards and 4 touchdowns. Just don't think it's going to happen. I love Justin Jefferson. I love Jamar Chase. I like Stephon Diggs. And I like Devontae Adams to get there with a bit more volume this year. Not volume, but, to still get there. He's not going to be the wide receiver one. I like all them. but I love what Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford have got going.
I do like the idea that you could make yourself famous by doing random hot takes about players who were good, turning bad. But anyway, we'll leave that to the professionals. Neil, before we go, let's talk international series. First of all, I'm going to have a bit of a small rant. NFL, do me a favour, just once. I am asking just once for one game that goes quote unquote over the pond, which now is the UK and Germany. Can you, for the love of God, give us two teams that are actually good playing against each other? This isn't like it's an ask. We've been doing this for 15 years or whatever, and still refuse to happen. Games are Vikings, who are Blair, against the Saints, who could suck. Giants, who suck, against the Green Bay Packers. Those games are at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Wembley get the privilege of the Denver Broncos versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Neil and I will be in Munich, Germany, watching the toilet Seattle Seahawks versus Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then, to be fair, Mexico City get San Francisco at Arizona. Neil, we will be in Germany for Seattle, Tampa Bay. How much are you looking forward to it on a scale of 1 to Paul Anna?
Well, I get to go to Germany, which is always a joy. Munich is a beautiful city. The stadium is stunning from the outside, and I'm looking forward to it. Whether I get a ticket for the game, of course, that answer lies with the force. But it'd be great to, assuming we do get one, it's a big ask, but to take in the environment in a country and city that we love, around alcohol that we like, and we will watch a game in Germany, whether it's in the stadium or not. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't share your carping criticism that the NFL to send us good teams. They don't know who the good teams are going to be. Teams surprise us every year. On paper, it looks shit because it's especially it's Tom Brady against either Geno Smith or Drew Lock. But what if it's Baker Mayfield with a chip on his shoulder? Probably won't be, but what if? So I'm very excited. The international games are always good. I especially like the early kickoffs because then you've got the whole day to send the kids away, like you dominate the telly. So I'm looking forward to it, and it's good to see that it's not just London, that we are spreading it around. That other countries, I'm sure, don't have as big a following as there is in the UK and Germany, because that's where NFL Europe pretty much was. But the one thing that you can miss me out with is the tired old narrative of UK fans didn't know when a touchdown was scored and clapped punts. Tell you what, mate, go and take your face for a shit.
You know why he said that though, right?
Get that crap out of my face.
You know why he said that though, right?
Go on.
Because he's German.
Yeah.
So he's trying to big up the German thing. We won't mention his name because he doesn't deserve it. But yeah, it's bad form and it's completely and utterly incorrect. Why would we cheer people who can't kick properly? We would only cheer good kicking, and punters and kickers in the NFL are largely crap. Which you may have made reference to many times over the years. Many times, because it's factually accurate. Neil, that's it for this week's show. Before we're back again for the off-season period, Weird Worlds and interviews and all, where can people catch you? Starting soon, you'll be able to see my stuff again when I start writing again at Numberfire, Rotoviz, 4for4 Football, and Player Profiler. So, looking forward to speaking to some old friends, hopefully getting some new ones. I'll be part of the world-famous draft kit for Roto Underworld. So, yeah, I will start writing again. I've been very lazy this off-season. I make no apologies for it. I'm getting old. I literally don't have the tolerance to do it anymore, as prolific as I used to be. So, I apologise to the 3 people who read my stuff, but I will get some done. Fantastic, Neil. I am at MainD7. Combined, we are at waxing_lyrical. Touchdown.co.uk. Touchdown review was out yesterday, looking over the draft, talking international series. Really good stuff. Please give it a listen. Guys do excellent work, and I just kind of lead them as they chat, some excellent stuff. Touchdown.co.uk will be starting to do some draft recaps, in which I will be doing the NFC East. Always look forward to praising teams I don't like and slagging off the team that I do. Anyway, that is it for this week. We will be back soon. The off-season starts now. Until then, these top guys are out.